Hello, and welcome to an uplifting episode of We Only Look Thin. I am your uplifting host, Katherine Weigel.
So uplifting.
So uplifting, and I have uplifted letting go of 155 pounds. And with me today is...
I have uplifted letting go also.
Who are you, and why are you...
I am your spouse, the he-host of this show, Mr. Donald Weigel.
It's so funny. Our daughter had to write a paragraph about something the other day, and the combination of words that she strung together for one of the sentences was like, no human has ever said, I have uplifted losing a total of blah, blah, blah. Like,
well, I have uplifted losing over 100 pounds.
This is very strange. Hi, welcome. This is We Only Look Thin.
This is We Only Look
Apparently,
Thin.
we don't know how to speak.
We are a married couple who have lost a combined 250 some
odd pounds.
Yeah.
We haven't done the math. Math was in a different episode.
Yeah, we've talked about math on many episodes, but this is not one of those.
This is not one of them. We are going to talk about a couple
feelings.
Of feelings and
brain chemistry.
Yes, and we're going to start it out with our tip of the week, which has to do with Whitney Houston.
Oh.
Ooh.
Whitney?
I don't know. I don't know. You know somebody who will always just pronounce his names really weird.
Over-enunciates
So I'm going to start doing that. That's not the tip of the week, though. And then we are going to talk about the uplifting side of depression.
Depression and weight loss.
Yep. And then we are going to finish off with POW!
Product of the week.
It has to do with your ears. So listen up. You're already doing it. Keep them frosty, people, because it's happening.
Keep your ears frosty.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So hey, it's December. How you doing in December, Donald?
I'm doing pretty good.
You've been really hustling on getting in your steps.
Yeah.
Sticking with your goals.
I'm waiting for the next season of a TV show I work on to start, which means I'm not working this last couple of weeks, and I've been getting a lot of steps.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Must be. I actually got steps. This isn't the tip of the week, but it is very cold here in Los Angeles. It was as cold as 50 degrees this morning. And this is a second tip of the week that we didn't even talk about.
Bonus tip of the week.
Week. We need like a button to bonus tip.
Bonus.
You're getting your money's worth. Bonus. We have talked before about pairing, not partridges and pear trees, but we have started rebounding in the morning, which we were doing, and we've started watching Xmas movies while we rebound.
Yeah, rebounders are these little trampolines, in case you don't know, and you can get steps on them, and it's actually a really good workout, and I feel like it works kind of different muscles than just
and we get
walking, we get steps on the Fitbit, and we've been watching TV shows and lately Christmas movies. It is
a great way because in the evenings we actually don't have that much time, but we're doing two things at once. We are rebounding and we're watching heartfelt Christmas movies. So
this ties into our product of the week later.
It
also.
Does.
Wow.
Ooh, you'll have to wait to get the POW of the wow.
Wow pow?
The wow pow.
So let's go into the real tip of the week.
The real tip of the week.
Tow.
The tip of the week was originated by Miss Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston.
Donald, where is the greatest love of all?
It's inside of you.
It is inside of you, like some sort of alien creature, a parasite that is sucking on your soul. The tip of the week is, imagine that every love song is actually about you loving yourself, the greatest love of all. Whether you have a sweetheart in your life or you are flying solo currently, imagine every love song is you about you. Like, we are all surrounded by love songs, and a lot of people turn them off because it's like, oh, I don't need to hear about that. But like, if you just imagine that Baby You Got Back is like about you and your own personal back, like how awesome is that if you're like celebrating your back? Like that is radical. Or like that John Legend song, All of Me Loves All of You. Like loving yourself really doesn't come naturally. It feels awkward. It feels strange. But darn it, if Whitney didn't know what she was talking about.
Hey, this is completely irrelevant to what we're talking about, but the John Legend Chrissy Teigen Christmas special, by the way,
magic.
Is magical.
It's magic.
It's awesome. Even if you don't like his music, it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah. Find it on NBC, wherever you can find NBC.
I don't know if it's on demand or not, but it's pretty great.
We have so many tips. We're like full of tips.
We are. Yeah, this is like the tip show.
It is. But like, imagine, honestly, I know I mentioned Baby Got Back. If you are a person with back, enjoy it, embrace it, love yourself. Like,
well, you know how couples have love songs? Like, pick a song for yourself. Like, something that inspires you, that reminds you that you love yourself. And it is important to love yourself in the weight loss journey. It is difficult for others to love you until you can love yourself. And it's difficult for you to give the love that you should to others in your life until you learn to love yourself and take care of yourself. And it's a big step along the weight loss journey.
And before Whitney came along, you might remember the Partridge Family.
Oh,
they had a song, I Think I Love You. What am I so afraid of? Like, if you're just trying to dip your toe into the loving yourself pool, that's a great song. It's like, what am I so afraid of? Like, what's wrong with loving yourself? It's like wearing your own get-along shirt. We've talked about that before.
What about that song, You Don't Have to Take Your Clothes Off to Have a Good Time?
I'm a never nude, so that ties in very well. But like, but the opposite. Let's get it on. You do you. You do what's right for you.
Wow.
No, but like, I remember when I actually first fell in love with Donald, I remember I was listening. I didn't like Rod Stewart, but I was in a mall and I heard You're in My Heart, You're in My Soul. Like, and I got all teary-eyed. I was thinking about Donald. What if you got teary-eyed thinking about loving yourself?
Thinking about yourself.
Thinking about loving yourself.
What about the old Frank Sinatra, Strangers in the Night?
That's also fine. That goes back to let's get it on.
Yeah.
Let's keep it classy. Let's keep it PG for all of our friends out there. But like, really, anytime you turn on the radio, songs are about love. So if you just imagine that they are about loving yourself, find some love in there. Epop or ah. That means I love you. Actually loving myself and caring about myself was super critical, like getting serious, super critical in this journey. And so I dare you to find ways to love yourself. And even if it's in a goofy love song or a real love song, just, love yourself.
Seriously, like, think about love songs as if you were singing to your own self. And it may sound a little goofy, and I know we're joking around, but seriously, it is important, and it is a big step in taking care of yourself and on a weight loss adventure.
Yeah. How deep is your love? It's as deep as you want it to be.
As deep as you would like it to be.
Do you like pina coladas and getting lost in the rain? Or getting lost? Like,
yeah, you had it right.
Okay. Yeah. Love yourself. Just find ways to love yourself. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of funny, too. So we're all about the comedy. So I think we've beaten this love horse.
Wow.
So
we're going to get letters from PETA.
Yeah.
Beating love horses.
Figurative horses. Can we get in trouble for that?
I think so.
Tip of the week to you, Donald.
Tip of the week to you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
So now that we've talked about love, I guess it all sort of ties in. Loving yourself is very important in this journey, and
it is.
Our topic this week is there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's about depression.
Yeah.
And managing it and living with it and still loving yourself and working through it.
And you have suffered from depression for a very long time.
What do I have to be depressed about? I'm an internet mogul.
You're a weight loss superstar.
You should be happy by now, right?
Yeah.
No.
Doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way. So I have talked about it before, that I have suffered from depression for a very long time. I actually told my grandmother this week that I was suffering from depression, and she is 94 years old, and she asked me if I was going through menopause.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, is it that time for you?" And I was like, "No, I've been depressed for 30 years. As long as I can remember, I've been depressed." So I thought that was pretty funny. But no, I have suffered from depression. But before we get started down the depression front, though, we want everyone to know that we are not mental health professionals?
No, we are very much not mental health professionals. We are just people who living with our experiences. Catherine has suffered from depression for most of her life, and I have lived with her for most of my life.
He has suffered from
I have suffered from Catherine's depression also.
No, we are going to talk about our experiences. Mental health is a very serious subject, and if you are suffering in a big way, we ask you to get actual professional assistance and support. But I'm just going to talk about my experiences and how it has affected our weight loss journeys.
Yeah, and yeah, specifically focusing a little more on weight loss than on other things.
Yeah, but if you need assistance, please find resources in your area to do so. So anyway, so that is the tip before we get into depression. But I don't know, Donald, do you want to ask me questions about depression?
One of the big questions is, you have talked about suffering from it for a long time. How do you think in the past that it affected your weight loss specifically?
Well, I would say for 40 years, it was my excuse to not practice self-care. I have talked a lot about how I felt like the victim of my life for most of my adult life. Like I thought, and we see depression in movies too, where it's like someone gets help from a therapist, or it's like Good Will Hunting, and they hug it out and the credits roll and then everything seems fine.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And then they hug it out and Matt Damon's fine. Yeah.
How do you like them apples? But I think that there's a perception, or at least when I was growing up, there was a perception of mental health. I have family members with mental health issues. One of my grandfathers had serious bipolar disorder, and I know that affected my family growing up. But I was ashamed of depression. I felt like it definitely, like, what did I have to be upset about? People had it worse than me, so I kind of didn't really talk about it when I was growing up. And so I would eat as revenge. And I love food. I've always loved food. But I feel like depression is something that you don't really talk about, or I felt shame around it. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was, Prozac Nation and kind of a lot of stigma, I think, about taking any kind of medication for depression. I thought it would kind of numb you, or it would turn you into a zombie. So I just kind of sat with my depression quietly and didn't really talk about it. But I definitely used it as an excuse to eat, and I found comfort in food. I felt like, looking backward, I owned, or like I wore my victimization of myself as a badge.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I can't change anything. My childhood, I did this and this and this. And I kept looking backward and thinking that the more I talked about that story, that it justified my being overweight or being depressed. And it didn't fix anything. Like, talking about my childhood didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
And I really did wear it like a badge, and I used it as an excuse, like, oh, other people have better lives, so it's just what I'm stuck with. And it didn't help doing that. I think maybe 15 years ago or so, I got so depressed that I would literally, like, at work, want to, like, cry and hide under my desk because I was so overwhelmed and so just, I don't know, consumed by my feelings. And
you soothed yourself with food.
I soothed myself with food. I would always kind of say, and it ties into weight loss too, like, well, I know what's wrong, so, and it's not as bad as some, there are starving children and fill in the blank. Like, what do I have to be depressed about? And I thought that self-awareness was like enough that I shouldn't have to take medication. I shouldn't have to see a therapist because other people had it worse. And I had a misconception about medication for depression.
Yeah.
Like I said, I thought it would kind of numb me.
On TV shows, it just seems like there are always characters who are on their medicine for depression or whatever, and then they talk about not being themselves and becoming zombies
or like super extreme cases. And again, we're not talking about really huge mental health issues. I'm talking about kind of run-of-the-mill depression. But I finally talked to my doctor about it maybe 15 years ago, and he suggested medication. And I was really hesitant at first to take it. I felt like I was quitting. I felt like I should know better. And I decided to take it. And I kind of did the like, well, I'll take it. And if it isn't right for me, then I'll stop. And I won't actually say which one I'm taking because I'm not a mental health professional. And I know that decision is something that should be made between the patient and doctor.
Yeah, for sure.
But I have been on one particular medication for the last 15 years, and it has really helped me. I know that is kind of a roundabout way to talk about all of it, but it takes the edge off of my extreme lows. I'm still the same person. I still have feelings. I still cry. Donald can attest to that. But it just helped take off that super hard edge of depression that used to kind of drive the car. And I still manage the depression. I mean, it's been 15 years.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of times when I've stopped taking it just because I kind of thought like, oh, well, I'm feeling so much better. I can stop. And it doesn't work. Like it comes back fast and furious and hard. And
yeah, from what I've read, it's, most depression like you're talking about, and again, not being a mental health professional, somebody might be able to correct me, but it seems like it involves brain chemistry. It's not really about what's going on in your life. It's not really about, well, I should be thankful because I have a good job and I have a family that loves me, and I shouldn't be sad. It is about brain chemistry, and you don't really have any control over that.
Well, and I actually have family members who might not know that I'm on medication. Some of whom have said, well, if you just took better care of yourself.
That's okay. Our family doesn't listen to this anyway.
I think I have one family member who thinks you have to pay to listen to podcasts, so they don't listen. They're like, well, how much do I owe you? I'm like, okay, never mind. But I have family members who say, if you worked out every day, you wouldn't be depressed. If you had green juices every morning, you wouldn't be depressed. If you did X, Y, and Z, you wouldn't be depressed. And I think I lived in shame about taking medication because of someone else's expectation of me. What do I have to be depressed about? I have a job, I have a family, I have this and this and this. These are, so you shouldn't need to take anything to get over your depression. And the shame that I felt about it, and I still, it's still hard to talk about, but the shame that I felt about it kept me from being honest about what my needs were. The depression that I have has nothing to do with the day of the week, my circumstances, my income, whether things around me are going well or poorly. When I am hit with a bout of depression, which still happens, the medication that I'm on doesn't remove it. It just takes away the super hard edge of it. When it hits, it hits. It has nothing to do with Donald. It has nothing to do with the number on the scale. It doesn't have anything to do with whether it's sunny or cloudy. It just shows up, and it's like a lead weight on my chest. And it still happens.
And look, I may not suffer from depression in the way
suffers
that
from
we're
my
talking
depression.
about. But I understand emotional eating and the way it relates to weight loss. And one of the big breakthroughs for me, and I've probably said it a dozen times on this podcast, but you're going to hear it again, was recognizing how much I lied to myself and how much I was using my emotions as an excuse to eat. And I think that if you're in a relationship with somebody who's dealing with depression, I think that a way that in which I can relate is thinking about those times when I'm there are external forces at work that are making me sad or making me angry, and I'm taking those emotions and channeling them into food. And, I was saying to myself, wow, I've had such a hard day. I deserve to eat this right now. And really, deep down, I'm lying to myself about it, and I'm just using it as an excuse to be able to eat what I actually want and not take responsibility for what I'm putting into my body.
Well, and I think, that is a very good point, Donald.
Why, thank you.
No, but I used food as a coping mechanism. I wanted to numb my feelings by focusing on something that made me feel really good. I think some people refer to it as buffering, where you're feeling a feeling, and so to avoid it, you turn to food. And I did that professionally for 40 years.
Did it as if it was your job.
But I felt like the two, like there was no way to experience one without having the other. And, it's almost like, I know we've talked before about the motivation bus. It's like when you're motivated, it's awesome and it's amazing. And I used to wait for my weight loss to coincide with those feelings of motivation, which were often like 7 years apart, those eye of the tiger moments. But I used to think that because I suffered from depression, that there was no way to practice self-care, that the depression actually was the driver and I was the passenger. And
So how have you changed? Like what's different now? What has allowed you to, I know I just asked you 3 questions. What has allowed you to, lose the weight and kind of get your head on straight? You still have the depression. You still have the same issues.
Well, I know, we sort of talked about it before, but like I used to hold on to my old stories, and the stories that I told myself were me as a victim of my childhood, of my job, of being put upon, overworked, underpaid, whatever. And when I started, and it's actually almost been 3 years since I started this journey venture practice.
Yeah.
And I was, when I started this, January of 2016, and I've talked about it before, I was in maybe one of the darkest holes of my life, even with being on medication. I just felt like I wanted someone to take over and pull my strings. I felt like a puppet, and I had to fight past that feeling and realize that like there was no rescue. Like no one was coming to rescue me from myself. So I had to push past that depression and that hopelessness and fight for some habits anyway. I never expected to lose 100 pounds. I just knew that I had to start working on making myself feel better. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but it was almost like I had to stop paying attention to my depression and start acting in a way that I wanted to feel.
Yeah.
So that was about, putting my Fitbit back on, going for walks, and learning the tools to manage the depression. Like, and to step back from it. I know I'm going all over the place with this, but it's really hard to talk about depression and being honest about it. So thank you for sticking with me. But like, before, when I would go to therapy, I would think, I'll share my woes, like like I said, the 10 things of my childhood that were terrible, or, ills that were done me, or, guys I had dated that were terrible. And that for somehow just talking about them would suddenly free me from the stories of them. And that never happened. And I was always like, oh, well, I don't feel any better going to therapy. And it turns out, what helps, and it's true in weight loss too, is the tools to push past your thoughts are where the change comes from.
Yeah.
And we've talked about before, and I still see people doing it where they're like, oh, I'm just starting Weight Watchers. Like, give me, 28 recipe ideas. A recipe is not curing my depression. A plan is not curing my depression.
Yeah.
It's the way I think about my thoughts and the way I think about my habits, pushing past anyway And I talked about this. We were just interviewed on the Samantha O'Toole Nutrition podcast.
Go check that out.
Yeah, we posted it.
Search for Samantha O'Toole Nutrition.
Yeah. And she also suffers from depression. And it's about pushing past how you feel and putting the habits in place despite how you feel is critical. And I realized that I could still go for a walk when I was depressed. I didn't have to just drink alcohol or eat a sleeve of cookies when I was depressed. Like, disconnecting my feelings from my actions has been critical in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, putting those habits in place. It's the same if you have depression or if you don't. It relates to motivation or relates to feelings of being able to do it. I have a habit of going on walks. I have a habit of tracking my food. I do it every day, whether I'm happy, sad, angry, etc. And putting those things in place and just sort of putting yourself on autopilot. And, you've talked about not letting the depression take the wheel. You let Cheez-Its take the wheel.
I do.
Not letting depression, drive the bus, so to speak, but letting your habits drive the bus has been a big key for you.
For sure.
And for me too, really.
And it is learned. It is a practice. And we have talked about that before, where everything we do is a habit, whether it's brushing our teeth or being a victim at work or with our families. It's just what we're used to doing. And we've talked about it before, where our brains want to do what is easy for us. Our brains want to protect us from change, because it's super easy to dive into a bowl of pasta. It is much harder to decide to steam some broccoli and, track your calories. And it's pushing past, like when I first started, it was so hard to not listen to my depression and not listen to the old stories and fight past those anyway. And, through accountability support groups, through listening to podcasts, like I talked about, the voices in my head were so negative when I started.
Yeah, getting other voices in your head is really important.
I needed voices that were stronger than mine. And I've said this before too, that you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. I was spending time with really sad music. Like, I used to go to work listening to the saddest Radiohead song that I could think of. It was called How to Disappear Completely. I would cry all the way to work. And I'm shocked that I was depressed. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But like, I actually thought to myself, I need to find a podcast with voices that are more positive than my own. And that's when I found the Half Size Me podcast. I found the Happier podcast, and filling my head with voices of positive people making positive changes made all the difference to me. And it taught me to not trust everything that I think and believe.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite sayings and platitudes, whatever you want to call it, is do not believe everything that you think.
That is huge. That has been a game changer for me, because I used to, almost like I was my own Ouija board. Wherever my brain took me, I would go. And now I realize that when that depression comes over me, and I've kind of talked about it before as being like, if you like the Harry Potter world, the Dementors, which are the evil gatekeepers of Azkaban prison who suck out all the joy in life. Like, I feel at times like there is a Dementor sucking out all the joy in my life. And that is just depression paying a visit. And it is a palpable feeling that overcomes me. And it can come from nowhere. There are times when I'm super happy and super content. And then times when suddenly I wake up and I just feel like there's a lead weight on my chest. And now when I feel that, I still practice the behaviors that I know are going to sustain me. I don't let those feelings drive my actions. There have actually been times in this podcast where we and it's hard to talk about, but there are times when we haven't been able to record because I've been hit with a wave of depression and I feel like a fraud and I feel like an imposter and I feel like I have nothing to share with anyone because of how I'm feeling. And Donald is patient enough with me to, not record when I'm in those times. And it feels lonely and it feels, there was a time when I thought like, oh, this is just how I'm going to feel forever. But I know it passes, just as motivation passes, just as ambition passes, depression also passes. So being able to know that those waves, I just have to ride through them and follow the habits anyway, just like the motivation bus, just like any part of weight loss, the action doesn't have to match the feeling. And
it's about learning and recognizing that, like realizing that your feelings are not in control of you and that you are more than just your feelings and you can choose to act, one way or another, even when you're very upset or depressed or angry.
Well, and also in our codependent marriage of love, like I don't want to see Donald unhappy. He doesn't want to see me unhappy. And I think you've had to kind of manage through my depression.
That's one of the big things. And again, I'm not a mental health professional. You may get better professional advice somewhere else, but
you just might.
One of the things that I've really had to learn over the years is that her depression is not about me. It's like when she's sad, I used to think it was because I was inadequate or that I wasn't doing something or, that I could swoop in and save her and, do something or, act in a different way that would cheer her up. And it's not about that. It's about her brain chemistry. And so I realized over the years that I just have to make sure she knows that I am there to offer support and be there, when she needs me and do what you want. But basically the best thing for me to do is give her space and let her work through it and not try and cheer her up.
Well, and it's not about being fixed. And I think, it's it's hard going through it in the moment. It feels insurmountable. Knowing for both of us, knowing that it will pass and that we both just kind of have to write it out. Like I've kind of joked, like when I'm going through it, I kind of have a shelter in place mentality. Like, don't make any big life decisions. Don't decide that we're never going to podcast again. Don't, make any big relationship decisions. Don't quit my job. Don't tell people what I really think of them. It is such a sensitive time.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to purposely go okay, it's almost like dealing with a really drunk friend at a party, no drunk dialing, no, operating heavy equipment, just be cool and ride it out.
And I think part of it too is figuring out the people in your life who you can trust to tell your story to.
That is a big one. And that ties into a book that we have talked about in the past called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown.
Yeah. And her main focus is shame research, but people with depression often feel ashamed, and sharing your depression with other people can, she's got a list of various types of reactions that people have.
Well, and it's something that I've had to manage through too. And, there's something about sharing your truth and sharing your vulnerability with the right people, because not everyone deserves to hear about my depression. I used to tell people who are not trustworthy my truth, whether it was a shame about a binge that I had had or a work disappointment. Not everyone is trustworthy with your information. And there are people, to tie into the Brené Brown book, she talks about courage, compassion, and connection. And the people that you can trust with your truth. I can tell Donald that I am depressed and that I'm feeling really down. And it isn't his job to cheer me up. It isn't his job, or, I am very grateful that he doesn't say well, what do you have to be depressed about? You're
or, hey, let's watch comedy.
You're oh, you're, I'll give you something to cry about.
Whoa. That took a dark turn really fast.
No. But like there are people who will judge you for your truth. What do you have to feel bad about? Like, oh, you're depressed. I don't want anything to do with depressed people. Like there are definitely people who want to distance themselves from the complexity of the human experience. And not everybody in my family knows that I suffer from depression. Not everybody in my family knows that I take medication for depression. I don't need to announce it to my boss that's what I'm doing. So trusting the right people with your truth, with your vulnerability, is super important.
Wow. And thank you for being so brave to get on a microphone and talk about it to anyone who
could Google.
Yeah.
But like, it is really hard even after losing 150 pounds, like, people might think, well, what do you have to be depressed about? You're already at your goal weight. You're, pretty in the face. Like, I'll give you something to be depressed about. And it's not about that. The depression is chemical. And I definitely have learned to focus on the bright side of life, and I count my blessings and I count my gratitude. Gratitude is something that I really have focused on in the last couple of years, which I didn't really feel before.
Yeah.
So changing my mindset by listening to podcasts, reading books that support a healthy mindset, listening to happier music. I love Radiohead, but I don't purposely listen to it to make myself cry anymore.
Yeah, I deleted your funeral dirges playlist from your iPhone.
Total bummer. But like I invest in the light now. I invest in happy people that make me happy, groups that make me happy, songs that make me happy. I don't indulge
podcasts such as this one, which make everyone happy.
So happy. But talking about it is scary. I know some people don't want to hear the truth about how I feel, but there are so many more people whenever I have shared in our accountability group about being depressed, who are very grateful to hear that I'm not the perfect person they think I am, that I'm real and human.
I still think you're perfect.
Aw, thanks. But being authentic feels so much better than hiding when I'm depressed and when I'm down, because there are, a few solid times a month when it doesn't have anything to do with where I am, who I'm with, what's happening, when it hits me. And I think I just have more resources now to manage that. So I think in the scope of, now that you know all this information, what do you do with it? As a student of yourself, if you suffer from depression or if you have people in your life who suffer from it.
And even if you don't, I mean, like, I think that we all can relate to, letting our emotions dictate our weight loss decisions.
Well, and, Donald doesn't suffer from depression per se, but he has to struggle with his feelings of victimization and being stressed at work.
For sure.
And I think you have been really open in the last couple of years to working on your mindset.
Definitely.
And whether it is...
and it's been huge in achieving my weight loss goal.
Well, and that growth mindset, changing your language from I can't, I'll never, it's impossible, changing those words around to what is possible, what can I change, that whole MacGyver idea of like gravity issues. Okay, well, I cannot change that I have this giant report due on Friday. What can I change? My mindset. I can take a 5-minute walk instead of just being really frustrated and grousing about my job. Like, all that mindset stuff is a choice. And I fight past my feelings all the time to keep my good or my helpful habits in place, because I know if I indulge the negative is going to grow. So it can be, it's in my sidecar. It is a passenger, but it is not driving my actions like I used to let it do. So there are podcasts like the Brooke Castillo podcast, and she is all about mindset change and owning your thoughts. There's the Happier podcast, which is all about injecting little bits of happiness into your everyday life. There are weight loss podcasts such as this and
such
others.
as We Only Look Thin. Why don't you subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever fine podcasts are purveyed?
There are authors, Brene Brown, who go deep into self-thought or self-talk, and another book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. All of that has helped with my growth mindset, and it doesn't fix the depression, but it does give me the tools to better manage my depression. And as with weight loss in any journey, we have talked about being polytheistic with our weight loss. Like, we're not following one single plan or one single voice. We're not following just Weight Watchers or whatever. We're taking all of these resources.
Bits and pieces from all of the plans that we've tried.
We're Unitarian, like everything that is good and happy in the world, bring it into your life and fill your thoughts, fill your Facebook feed, your podcast feed with as much happiness as you can find. It really does help. And it doesn't diminish the need for actual mental health professionals. If you have a serious issue, go to professionals for professional help. But in terms of general mindset and the possibility of change, podcasts, books have just really helped me. And having a supportive husband and weight loss community.
Hey, that's me.
Weight loss community has really helped too. So being authentic with the right people really makes a difference. So I'm still struggling through it. I've had a few really hard days. My grandmother thinks it's menopause. It's not menopause. I'm good. No hot flashes yet, Grandma. She's not listening to this podcast.
No.
But, I fight on despite how I feel. And in this weight loss journey, we're all going to feel strong emotions, whether it's full-on depression or whether you are managing boundary issues with family. You've got to learn to fight for yourself. And
for sure.
I feel like we're doing that each and every day. And Donald has been a great support in my venture through depression.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Donald. It's great to be here on your show.
This. All right, you feel good? Should we move on to the product of the week?
I'm feeling good.
All right.
What's the product of the week?
Pow! Product of the week. It is wireless headphones.
What's that? I prefer wires.
You prefer wires?
No, I don't. I prefer wireless.
Wireless headphones. So,
why did we first get wireless headphones, Donald?
We have a daughter.
We do.
And we used to like to stay up late and watch TV shows that were inappropriate for her after she went to bed.
And her bedroom wall is adjacent to our living room wall.
Yeah.
And every Advil commercial, every plop plop fizz fizz would wake her up.
Yeah.
It was really annoying.
And it was very difficult for us to watch adult-type TV shows after she went to bed. And so we got these wireless headphones. The brand we have is Sennheiser, but I'm sure there are many good ones out there. I'll put some links in the show notes to some. And it allowed us to stay up late and watch some TV. But now...
Sitting on
the couch. Now we get up super early.
What?
And we rebound, as we were discussing earlier. And we caught up on The Handmaid's Tale, and we've been watching Christmas movies more recently.
So these are full-on headphones that we wear to watch television. And it is great in a smaller household to be able to watch television without disrupting family members around you or neighbors at an early hour. So when Donald is not working and I work from home, as we talked about before, Donald can watch Phil Donahue in the living room while wearing headphones.
I've been binging The Price is Right.
No, but Donald can watch television.
Yeah, Catherine's
and
office
rebound.
is in our place, and so it allows me to be able to watch TV too. But in terms of weight loss, like I can get on the rebounder and do that while I'm watching TV and not disturb anybody else.
Well, and it's huge too because right now in the Northern Hemisphere it is winter. Brr. And so we are rebounding in the morning. We are not waking our daughter up with loud television. So the wireless headphones have been great. It's there's a little receiver, transponder thingy that plugs into our receiver in our television and sends the sounds through the airwaves like magic into our earphones. So it's been a very helpful product for us. I think we used to be a victim to, oh, it's too cold to go outside. Oh, we can't watch television. We'll just sit in the dark quietly until our daughter falls asleep.
Exactly.
So it's just another tool in our tool belts for helping us hit our goals. Watching whatever Donald watches, The View, The Taste, whatever
all
TV
those.
happens.
Anything that's 2 words and starts with a the.
So wireless headphones, use them.
And that is your product of the week.
Pow,
everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. I know this episode wasn't the yuck fest that we often have, but hopefully you got something good out of it, and hopefully you will continue to listen. So please subscribe to us. We're available on iTunes and all the Android formats, wherever you get your podcasts. And it would really help us out if you could rate and review us on Apple, on iTunes. They are the kings. It matters a lot, and we would really appreciate it. 5 stars would be great, but we love constructive criticism. And you can find us at weonlylookthin.com.
You can find us on Instagram at weonlylookthin.
You can find us on Twitter at weonlylookthin.
You can email us at weonlylookthin@gmail.com.
And wherever you got this podcast.
Yeah. And thank you so much for listening. I know that this, like Donald said, was a little bit of a departure from our usual format, but depression is real, and it's my co-pilot. So wanted to let you guys know that you can still live with depression and lose a lot of weight and be super inspiring to a bunch of people.
Super inspiring.
See more human also. Don't I see more human now?
You seem much more human, other than the perfect Stepford wife robot that you seem to be.
So thank you so much for listening. We've got some big fun changes coming in 2019 for We Only Look Thin. So keep an eye out on the Instagrams and the Facebooks for information about our upcoming Accountability Chum buddy group that's going to be opening up.
Wolt Place,
a place to be you while you're working on you. So coming soon. So whether or not you're making your own personal love song list, or you've got mascara running down your face because you've been listening to the Smiths for 24 hours, just remember that Donald and I are an inspiration.
The information that you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The hosts are not medical professionals. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.